Mr. Woodcock, good afternoon. Can you hear us? I know he has some hearing impairment. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, good. Would you introduce yourself, tell us your name and your DOC number?
My name is George Woodcock Jr., DOC number 103702.
All right, and thank you, sir. Counsel, would you introduce yourself for the record?
Good afternoon, Robert Lancaster, attorney for Mr. Woodcock. Mr. Renats, if you'd like, I can introduce everybody else in the room
Thank you, yes.
here in support. In the room in support of Mr. Woodcock is Maria Thompson, his niece, Chris Thompson, nephew, Diane Carter, niece, David Carter, nephew, George Woodcock, the third, his son, Garrett Woodcock, Mr. Woodcock's son. There with you at headquarters should be Alan Rutherford, and also Mr. Cole's daughter, Faith Cole Dye, should be there with you as well. Watching on YouTube is Dolores Carter, Mr. Woodcock's sister. She will be the one where he would live in Alabama should he be eventually released. And Gail Carter, his niece, is also watching on YouTube. Maria Thompson here at the institution would speak today. Alan Weatherford there with you at headquarters should speak. And then Faith Cole Dye also wishes to speak.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate all that. In opposition, I'll recognize that we have Ms. Pam Cole, Lawrence Quinton, Darlene LeBlanc, Scott Cole, Charlene Roth, and then by Zoom, David Altman. First, Mr. Woodcock, I'll read some identifying information, ask you to confirm it. Then I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Jackson. Your case has been assigned to her. Mr. Woodcock, you're here seeking a commutation of your sentence. You were sentenced in Orleans Parish, May of 1982 to natural life at hard labor for a first-degree murder conviction. Is that information correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you answer Mrs. Jackson, please?
Good afternoon.
Did you hear her, Ms. Jackson?
What'd she say?
She just said good afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon.
Okay. I have your medical records, Mr. Woodcock, and they indicate that you have a hearing impairment. Are you
Yes,
able
ma'am.
to hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
And you have a device that helps you hear. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. A hearing aid.
Okay. Well, I'm going to try to speak up, and if you can't hear me, let me know. All right.
Yes, ma'am.
How old are you, Mr. Woodcock?
I'm 83 years old, ma'am.
And how long have you been incarcerated on this charge?
I've been locked up for 43 years.
That's the same information that I have, that you were 40 years old when you were arrested for this crime. You have been incarcerated for 43 years, and now you're 83. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, who was the victim in this case?
Mr. Armand Cole.
And who was Mr. Armand Cole to you?
Mr. Armand Cole was married to my sister, Betty Cole, and
So he was your brother-in-law, is that correct?
yes, ma'am. One I didn't really know.
Well, but in fact, he was your brother-in-law, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
How long had your sister been married to Mr. Cole?
I don't know, ma'am.
Your sister was also charged in connection with Mr. Cole's death. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
She was convicted of conspiracy and she received a 20-year sentence. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Woodcock, would you please tell us what happened in this case? How did you come to take Mr. Cole's life? Tell us what happened.
Well, during that time, I was under the influence of alcohol. Plus, I had medical problems with my ex-wife.
Stop talking right there. What do you mean medical problems with your ex-wife?
She was seeing a psychiatrist, and I was saying the same thing. A psychiatrist, and it was a problem with her being a stealing money.
All right. So what did that have to do with your committing this crime?
That comes from me and my fall partner, John Paul Fallon. And it was a conspiracy between the two of us that I would take and kill his father-in-law, and he would take and kill Mr. Cole.
And why would you want to kill Mr. Cole since you say you barely knew him? Why would you be interested in killing your brother-in-law?
It was an agreement between myself and Paul Fallon. His father-in-law was retired from the railroad people in Pennsylvania, and he had a lot of money. And Paul Fallon wanted it. And between the two of us, we figured we could make some money out of it. Even if we had to take it and borrow it for my sister, for me, and he would take it, get it from his wife.
Okay, let's stop for just a moment because you've lost me because none of this is making a lot of sense to me. Who wanted your brother-in-law killed?
Didn't understand.
She's asking you about the conspiracy with Betty wanting her husband killed.
Not necessarily what I would consider a conspiracy between myself and my sister, but it comes down to it that I was acting on information from her that she was telling me about her husband, Aubrey Cole.
And what was that? What was that information?
Abuse, alcoholism, and also molesting young girl.
So your sister made those accusations against the victim. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And so why did that lead you to taking his life?
It was a deal between me and Paul Fallon. It was a simple deal where he would do something and I would do something, and we both gain from that actions of each other.
Well, again, I don't understand what Mr. Fallon had to do with your killing his brother-in-law and what you had to gain from Mr. Fallon killing his stepfather or whoever, father-in-law or whoever. No, I don't understand how those are connected. But we'll move on. So how did you kill Mr. Cole?
Used a 25 automatic,
Well, that's,
25 caliber.
well, just tell us what happened. Where was he when you killed him? What are the circumstances? Tell us how you took his life.
What's she saying?
She wants you to explain the circumstances of the murder. Tell her what happened that day that you killed Mr. Cole. That's what she wants you to tell her.
Well, what happened was we were drinking and decided to go hunting over in West Mississippi at the at a government installation over there. We were drinking, we went to New Orleans, drink some more, and I was gonna take and borrow a rifle, a certain kind of rifle, which was a Henry 4440. And the person that had it was Mr. Armand Cole. And he had it down in his basement. When we got to the house, he said, yeah, come on in. And he went downstairs and we were up and back of him.
Who were you drinking with?
John Paul Fallon.
Okay, so you and Mr. Fallon went to Mr. Cole's house, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And what happened when you got to Mr. Cole's house?
He knocked on the door and he come to it and asked us what we were doing. And we told him over here drinking and wanted to borrow the rifle, the 4440 Henry. And he said, yes, sure, come on. And he turned and went down the stairs. And I flipped out.
Well, when you flipped out?
Aggravation
About what?
about my way of life. And also about my problems. Not only was I having problems with my wife, but I had problems with society as a general principle. I found out I made a very serious mistake when I retired after the Marine Corps. And
We're going to talk about that in a minute. But you said that the reason you killed your brother-in-law was that your sister had told you some pretty bad things about Mr.
yes, ma'am.
Cole. And now you're telling us, oh, I just flipped out because my life was not going well. So which one is it?
Both.
Your sister was charged along with you, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. She was.
And the allegation was that the murder was committed for the insurance money on Mr. Cole. It had nothing to do with any abuse. It had nothing to do with any issues you were having. It was committed because there was a life insurance policy on Mr. Cole, and you all wanted to get the money.
Yes, ma'am, my sister received the money. And it was one of those things where I could borrow anything in money from her. And it was basically the same thing for Paul Fallon. I was to do him a favor by killing his father-in-law.
Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit. You were in the military
Yes, ma'am.
and you had 2 stints in the military, is that correct?
Say again, ma'am?
You had 2 stints in the military.
You had 2 different stints in the
You were in the
military.
Army and then you were in the Marines.
I was in the Army and the Marines. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's what
I
I'm
did
trying
3 years in the Army back
to
in the 50s. And then I joined the Marine Corps and finished it out 20 years.
Okay.
Retired.
Okay, let's stop talking, stop talking. So you did your, whatever your commitment was to the Army. And you were discharged from the Army, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
How long after that did you join the Marine Corps?
Approximately a year, maybe a little more.
And what made you join the Marine Corps? What made you go back into the military?
That was the safest place for me. And
What does that mean?
I like the idea of what I was going to do in the Marine Corps, which is reconnaissance worker.
Well,
Well, I
let's,
was-
why did you think that was the safest place for you to be?
I've had a friend of mine that was in the Marine Corps, plus I have my one of my cousins, and I knew some people that had been in the Corps and got out. My attitude was ideal for me would be in the Marine Corps because I could take and go to different schools and enjoy the training that I would have to do from boot camp until I retired.
Okay, so how long were you in the Marine Corps?
17 years, ma'am.
Okay, and you had the rank of E7?
E7, yes, ma'am.
And then you retired due to alcohol and family issues. Tell us about that. Why did you end up retiring from the Marine Corps?
Well, I've been drinking for 4 or 5 years while I was in the Corps. And I was having problem with my ex-wife. And she was seeing a psychiatrist. Plus, I caught her in a lot of lies. And it wasn't good for the children. She had 3 girls of her own, and I had 2 sons. So it was 5 children.
Okay. Well, what part did alcohol play in your retirement? Because you mentioned alcohol, so
Yes,
What part did alcohol play in your retirement?
It influenced my decisions. One was I didn't want the children to be left hanging because of my ex-wife. And I decided to get out so that I could be there. And once I got out after
So let me ask you this, did your drinking cause any problems in the Marine Corps? Did your drinking cause you to have any problems with the Marine Corps?
no, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Well, let's fast forward and talk about how you have spent the last 43 years. I noticed that you only have had 2 disciplinary write-ups in 43 years, which is very commendable. Your last write-up was almost 30 years ago in 1994. Do you remember what that was for?
Yes, ma'am.
What was that about?
It was I was working in the mattress factory as a clerk, and they had a new man to come in that my boss wanted him to know what the paperwork was like and what he had to do. But he had a problem that he was trying to be a good guy to everybody, and he took and just took my coffee and was giving it away. And I tried to take it and explain it to him that that's not the way it's done. And being in the penitentiary, you cannot allow anyone to take anything from you. And at that time, which was back in 1994, it was still
So what did you do to get a write-up?
they put it down as a fight. It was one blow thrown. It was him. And he didn't throw any more of them. And finally he listened to me talking to him. And when I was talking to him, the security guard come in and he's put it down as we were fighting.
Okay, so it was for a fight. That was the write-up you got, was for fighting, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, let's talk about some of the programs you have taken. Tell us about what programs have you taken to address your drinking?
As soon as I got to the penitentiary in 1984 and the first in 1985, I joined the AA group at Maine Prison. Went through the steps and everything like that. And after being an alcoholic, and I made an honest inventory of myself and realized that I needed help. And I moved forward. I also learned that AA isn't just about me; it's helping someone else.
When did you participate in AA?
In 1985,
For how long?
about
The reason I'm
About
asking,
6 years.
I don't, I might have overlooked it, but I don't see any documentation of AA participation. I don't see that in the file, okay? I'm just pointing that out. I show that you've taken Cage Your Rage,
Yes, ma'am.
that was in 17, Thinking for a Change in 18, Victim Awareness in 19, pre-release phase 1 and 2 in 2023. That sound about right?
Yes, ma'am.
Um,
And the 100 hours
that's
covered
pretty-
alcohol
well,
and
not in depth. Not in depth. Why is there such a long gap between the time you came to prison and the time you started taking classes? It's like you didn't really get started with classes until 2017. Why is that?
I joined the Veterans Organization in Maine Prison. And also the other ones, Camp C and then at Camp F.
I see that you've been involved in clubs, but what I'm looking at is, it looks like up until 2017, you hadn't really taken any kind of programs, and I'm trying to find out why you spent, over 30 years in prison before you started taking programs.
That's because it was made available to me at that time. And I had time for 'em. Everything before that, I was working at a job.
Given your situation, you didn't think it would be better to take some programs that would help you try to figure out what got you there, and to make sure you don't make some of the same choices again? I'm just concerned about your lack of participation in any substance abuse programs, not living in balance, not celebrate recovery. I'm just not seeing any work being put in to dealing with your problem with drinking. Well,
I dealt with it. I
Go ahead.
dealt with it.
I didn't hear you.
I said, ma'am, I dealt with that problem when I first got there. And I learned what I had to do, who I had to talk to, and how I had to take it, come down on myself and to be making harder decisions. And I wasn't under the influence of alcohol, and I haven't had a drink in over 43 years.
Tell me about victim awareness. I don't need to know when you took it. I just need to know, what did you learn from it?
Well, I realized I had to be more considerate about what my victim's family and his friends and my family and my friends and associates taking responsibility for my own actions, no matter what they are and what they relate to.
Let me ask you this. What do you think, how do you think your actions affected Mr. Cole's family and his friends. Tell me about that.
Well, I had the opportunity to speak to his two children,
Friday.
his daughter and his son. And they explained how they felt and how they had reacted at that time of the
I
of the
understand that. But even before that, Mr. Woodcock, you didn't give any thought to what you did and how you hurt so many people?
yes, ma'am, sure have, every day of my life.
So what are your thoughts?
My thought is I had to change and I had to become harder
No,
on myself.
your thoughts about the Cole family. Tell me what your thoughts have been about the Cole family.
Well, I had tried to figure out what they were thinking and if just what they were going through at that time or even
Well, what did
since
you
then.
figure out? You said you tried to figure it out, so what did you figure out about what they were feeling and thinking?
Excuse me, ma'am? I didn't understand.
She asked you what you figured out about what the Coles were going through because of the murder.
I figured out that it affected them psychologically, mentally, and physically. It affected their grandmother and their grandfather, their mother, and their sisters and brothers of the Cole family. I knew it was a very difficult time for them, having not having the opportunity to have a conversation with him or be with him or enjoy their time together.
Warren, what information can you give us about Mr. Woodcock?
Since he first came here to us in 1984, he did in fact work, and he worked various jobs for us throughout the 80s, 90s. He worked at print shop, mattress factory, and did some maintenance for us, plumbing crew. The last, probably looking at it from 2004 until just a couple of years ago, we'll say in 15, he went to the clothing room, but he worked for us in the rifle range. So he has had jobs with us that have been jobs of responsibility, especially around the rifle range where we had live rounds, we had guns constantly there. He worked around there. We never had any problems with him in that respect. And it wasn't until getting into 17, 18, when he started working at Camp F in the clothing room for us. From the standpoint of his medical right now, he does have several underlying comorbidities related to chronic kidney disease, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, diabetes, glaucoma. So right now, as well as his job that he does have, he's got frequent specialty clinic appointments through neurology, nephrology, and cardiology.
All right, thank you. Mr. Woodcock, I see that you have a walker. Why do you have to have a walker?
I have 3 vertebrae in my lower back the top one and the bottom are squeezing the one in between. And it's affected my the nerves, and my left leg doesn't work very often because of that. And I've been to the doctors to see about it. The x-rayed, had an epidural, and
So you have a compressed disc,
yes, ma'am.
okay? And what about your diabetes? Is it under control?
Your diabetes, is it under control?
Far as I know, I don't have diabetes.
Oh, okay, I thought the word.
I don't take no medicine for it.
That's
I
fine.
don't take any medicine.
And when did you develop any hearing issues?
I've had the hearing issue for maybe almost 10 years.
All
I've been
right,
going to the doctor and they'll give me a test. I even been to New Orleans to the hospital down there where they put you in the enclosed booth and the headphones
all right.
and different tones.
Okay, that's fine. I show that you have an aortic aneurysm, glaucoma. And then it says pre-diabetes, so you haven't officially crossed over into diabetes, but you have pre-diabetes. So if you were to be successful, Mr. Woodcock, I know that the Parole Project has indicated their willingness to extend their services to you in the short term, but in the long term, what's your plan?
Well, my plan is to take advantage of the parole project if it's possible, to learn more about society and what is required for an individual. As for a place to live, I have my sister who lives in Mobile, Alabama, along with her children, and she has offered to allow me to stay with her, and she's a registered nurse. So I am one of my things about medical problems is as soon as I can, I will go to the VA hospital and try to get something done. And at least they'll take it, do all kind of tests on me, and they'll make up their mind whether I can qualify for an epidural or a laser.
I didn't mean specifically your health, but just in general, how you're gonna be able to live and support yourself or be supported. Have you ever been diagnosed with any kind of mental health issue?
Yes, ma'am. A long time ago. 1957, in the Army, I had to go see a psychiatrist.
Why?
Also,
Why?
Just why?
why? I had an argument with another recruit, and they broke up the fight before we could throw in the blows. I like that, but he had to go see the psychiatrist, and so did I. And I guess it was just
I think that they just send you to, I mean, I'm sure recruits fight all the time. I don't think that's anything that's unusual. So why would they think that you needed to see a psychiatrist?
Ma'am, I couldn't tell you that. That's the Army. They do things different than
Is-
civilians.
Is that the only time you've seen a psychiatrist or been treated for any mental health issues?
No, ma'am, in 1962, while I was in boot camp in the Marine Corps, they saw this in my record and they wanted to know what it was about. And they called me in for observation and a discussion. And then after that, I didn't have to go back at all. They
Mr.
just,
Okay, thank you, Mr. Woodcock. I appreciate it.
Mr. Knox, and that's all I have. All right, thank you. Mr. Woodcock, we're going to hear from the folks who want to speak in support. So first, could we hear from Ms. Faith Dye? You want to step up to the podium, please?
what'd she say?
Faith is gonna speak.
Oh,
I just really wanted this whole thing down to deal with, memories remorseful. And he's 83 years old, and I think he's been in prison long enough. See, you know, to live some of his life not in there.
What's your relationship to him, Ms. Dye?
That's my uncle. Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Weatherford?
My name is Alan Weatherford, and just want to take just a few minutes there to speak to y'all.
Mr.
Right.
Weatherford, tell us your relationship.
That is my uncle, and George Woodcock is my uncle. I had worked in law enforcement for 39 years, 7 years as chief of police in Gulfport, retired in 2013. But I continued to work in law enforcement. I worked closely with the Mississippi Department of Corrections under the Interstate Compact Act previously. And I do appreciate and understand the important role that y'all do. But I just want to speak briefly about my uncle, George Woodcock. You know, when I was 11 and 12 years old, I remember him coming home and looking at him in his Marine uniform and was trying to decide if that's something I wanted to do. But of course, you know, talking to him and he had that rough, you know, tough, what I call the Marine outlook there of the Marine Corps side of it. And of course, he was just a serious man. And he had a great sense of humor with nieces and nephews. And as a youngster, I was shocked when he was arrested. I was staggered. I was mad. I didn't talk to George for about 10 years. And because of me being mad and disappointed. I started visiting George in Angola. And over the years, I was able to develop a relationship. What you saw today here is not George Woodcock. When it took me, because I've been in law enforcement, it took some time to build a relationship with George there. If he's in a group of people, he's not going to say much. He's going to get nervous, talk to him one-on-one there. So it took some time to build a relationship with him and over the years and see the respect that others had, the guards and the other trustees that was there at Angola. So in probably about 2013 is probably when I had a good discussion with George. But I don't know if he recalls that discussion that we had when we had one at Lee. In 2011, our daughter was killed by a drunk driver, and the defendant pled guilty and was sentenced to 25 years. It turned my world around there. is from the victim side. Now I realize what homicide, victims' families were going through, the emotions, the grief, that side of, so I started talking to George, regarding what I was going through and what this young man had killed our daughter and being sentenced. And opening his eyes to the grief that he had caused Faith, and the Cole family there, and not just them, all our family there. I think that opened his eyes. I think that was an opportunity, and maybe that was the timing, there. It was just, but I could say this to Faith and to the Cole family, and to y'all, one-on-one, over time, build a relationship, and we're able to trust me and me trust him and talk to him, that he is remorseful. He does not do very well there. He's hard of hearing. You have to repeat things there. But his record, I think, speaks for itself. 2 write-ups there. Just asking for consideration. Served 43 years. He has strong family support. And I'll say this to you, it's on a professional level there. If I have any concerns about public safety, I would not be standing here today. I would not be standing here today. I would offer him a place to stay on my property there if he didn't have a place to go. But what you see of George today is not the George that I know over the years. And I was able to talk to the young man that killed our daughter. He is now out. I did not oppose him getting out because I was able to speak to him there. So I say to Faith, Officer Dad, to the Cole family, I'm sorry that we're all having to go through this there, and just hopefully there's a consideration there. Utmost respect for everybody in this room.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And I believe, at Angola, we have Chris Thompson. Is that right, Mr. Lancaster?
Maria Thompson, Ms.
Maria.
Renata.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
She could actually just sit right where she's at. We can
Okay.
see her on the screen and we'll be fine.
Hello, my name is Maria Thompson, and I'm George's niece. He's my mother's brother. She was supposed to speak today, but she was unable to attend due to a short-term ailment that she's been treated for. Therefore, I'm going to speak for the family, and I'm going to incorporate some of her words. I thank you as members of the board for the dedication to this important decision. I know it's hard for you. My purpose today is to assure you that it would not be a mistake to release my uncle back into society. He's been in prison for 43 years. And since the purpose of prison is for rehabilitation and punishment, we believe that there's evidence that he's met both of those. And the specific details are in your packets. I'm not going to take your valuable time to repeat the information you've already reviewed. Since my uncle was incarcerated, he's had continuous support from his family members and will always have that support from this large network of family. And if he's released, he'll live with my mother, who is a registered nurse, having served in many roles in critical care, quality assurance, and as the director of nursing at a large hospital. She'll see that he receives the best of care. And she has a good support system from myself, my husband, my brothers and sister. My sister lives next door, and many other nieces and nephews in Alabama and Mississippi area. And he'll never go out with the resources he needs. Over the year, he's expressed great remorse and regret for his actions to us. And we truly believe that he's not the same person as he was when he was 38-year-old man when this crime was committed. We'd love to see him be able to come home and spend what years he's got left with his loved ones. His sons would love to have some time with their father that they've greatly missed, because they were 6 and 7 years old when they were separated from him. And the 2 siblings he has left would love to be able to finally see him come home as well. And again, I thank you for the work you do as a board, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. We appreciate it. All right, we'll hear from the opposition now. For those of you who are here, I don't know who wants to go first. I'll let you choose.
Hi, my name is Charlene Cole Roth. My dad is only brother. My dad changed at night, that morning, and he had to go identify that body. It's never been the same. My mom and dad have both passed. And my sister and I said that we were gonna carry this on as long as it meant getting out. My mom, through her dementia, always was scared that somebody was gonna find her and hurt her also. And that's why we're here today. So that it's not allowed to happen to anybody else. And have their family go through what our family has gone through. My grandmother, my grandfather died not long after my uncle. My grandfather was destroyed, tempted, buried his son. And not long after that, my grandmother couldn't deal with it anymore. So that's why I'm here today for my family, because Lon doesn't get a chance to see the light of day again, to spend another moment with his family. Thank you.
My name is Pam, and Army Cole is my dad. And in 1978, in December of 1978, 4 days before Christmas, I received a phone call at my job from my grandfather telling me that my daddy was killed. I think that was the worst day of my life, of my family's life. Even though my mother and father were divorced for many, many years, he was still my daddy. He did not deserve what he got. Like Charlene says, my grandmother and my grandfather died before they ever got to see my daddy's killer brought to justice. In 1982, George Woodcock was sentenced to first-degree murder for the killing of Armin Cole. He received a life sentence the rest of his natural life. No benefit of parole, pardon, or suspension of sentence. I understand that George is 83 years old. I understand that he has served 43 years in prison, but my daddy's been dead for 45. He never got a chance in life to live, to be 83 years old. That was taken away from him. He was taken away from me. He was taken away from my family. My family highly opposes his commutation. We feel that my daddy and my grandparents should be able to rest in eternal peace. Please, please deny George Woodcock commutation. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Scott Cole. Colleen. Am I out? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
raw emotion. It's a couple of things. We're here to see if George is rehabilitated. I mean, that's the big question, I believe. And, I mean, in his own words and his applications, he's mentioned, I hear that his sister is a nurse. I mean, the guy is admitting that he's under psychiatric care with a nurse. I would imagine he's being medicated. We were told we can't say anything after meeting with him, but he admitted that he met with us. Something to say. He says he suffers from paranoia, and that this paranoia started at age 15. So we don't have files that maybe you have there. But my concern is that there may still be a psychiatric issue going on. And if you read the timeline of this guy's life, it's like this guy seems to do better when he's in a controlled environment. From 1940 to 1956, he was under parental control. At 16, he ran away and dropped out of school. From 57 to 60, he was in a controlled environment. He was in the Army. He gets out of the Army in 60. His first crime is a burglary. 61, because of this burglary. Somehow he joined the Marines in 61 to 76. He tells us that he was retired out of the Marines. But I believe in the files that our family was able to access it. And he didn't put this on his applications, but he committed a crime in 76, 2 crimes, burglary in Hawaii. He was under investigation for that. And a third crime, conspiracy to commit. And I believe that the Marines didn't want it. And I heard what he said again today about his ex-wife Connie. Maybe his children are hearing this for the full story. But you don't retire from the Marines on an $800 pension back in 1976 and think you're going to support 5 children because she had mental illness. Right? She divorced him. Right? He paid child support out of that pension. It truly was. And I think the drinking, he admits it, he says right here. I served in Vietnam, Germany, and other places. I retired from the military in 76 because of family problems. That's what he said today. And my drinking became increasingly worse when I returned to civilian life. We're determining today if this guy is capable of returning to civilian life. So the 2 crimes in 76, and then he murders our father in 78. And then he's arrested in 80. Yeah, sobriety. He quit because he can't have a drink, right? And he hasn't even gone through the steps of sobriety. Thank you for asking the question. You talk about sobriety and what did you learn? I don't think you learned anything. So this was hard for me. I told my sister, I can't, they want me to make a decision. Can this guy get out? And I want to be fair. But the more that I delved into this guy's life, it's like he's shown no remorse to us. We were told by Gail Gaynor, he can't contact him. Well, his attorney could contact us. Somebody could send us a letter and say, I'm sorry. His brother-in-law says he met with George and he has been a victim. And he's saying he's remorseful. Words have meaning. And we've never heard the words. We met with him on Friday. My sister had to say a 2.5-hour meeting. Are you sorry? And his first response was, I'll tell you at the end. So I don't think he's rehabilitated. I don't think sobriety has worked for him. And you know what I think is going to happen? And if he does get out, I'll never know, but I think he's going to have a drink. And I think if he gets off of his medications, elderly people can still stab people or kill people. He tells me in his application, he wants to go to the VA groups and to the AA groups. I'll tell you, there aren't model citizens in these groups. And if he can be influenced by someone, or if he can influence someone, I mean, that would be an awful thing. But it's like I said, we can't determine what's in this guy's mind and heart. All we have to do is ask him questions and see what's in those applications. And so today I say, as much as it's hard, I think this guy needs to stay in a controlled environment. And I think it needs to be within a situation like he's in now. I mean, I realize he's old. My heart goes out to his family. But it's like my sister and my cousin said, our father's not here. He never got to be old. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. All right, Mr. Woodcock, is there anything you want to say to the board before we turn it over to Mr. Lancaster?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, members of the board. I would like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to appear before you today. I have been incarcerated for 43 years for killing Mr. Armengol. I have had many years to reflect on the pain and suffering I has caused Mr. Armengol's family. I deeply regret my actions that night. Since my incarceration, I have grown old and matured as well. I am not the same man I was 44 years ago. I worked until I have some major medical issues. I have participated in a number of programs. I have learned to be a better person than I was 44 years ago. I believe I have done everything possible to ensure my change and growth while incarcerated. Now, I thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lancaster?
Thank you. Mr. Woodcock came to Angola in 1982, at a time, well, 1984, at a time in which many of the programs that people come before the board today didn't have available early on in his incarceration. He did in 1985 participate fully in Alcoholics Anonymous. There is a certificate. I understand from Ms. Jackson's questions that there was no information about that in the official packet, but in the information that I submitted, there is a certificate of his completion of Alcoholics Anonymous at that point. He did work the 12 steps. He then focused on work. If you look at Mr. Woodcock's job assignments throughout the period of his incarceration, he worked consistently and in positions of trust, in positions of responsibility. As the warden mentioned, he worked for an extended period of time in the rifle range, which is a position of tremendous trust given the nature of that work being around guns, live firearms. It's also a place in which folks are trained, and Mr. Woodcock was given that position of trust. He's been at Camp F for a very long period of time. That's the trustee camp. He's been a Class A trustee, I think, for over 30 years. He has been institutionally compliant. I know there were some questions of his write-ups. As mentioned, he only has 2. His first one, I think, only resulted in a sentence of 5 days. And the second one, the fight that was mentioned, that sentence was actually suspended. Based on his success in prison and his completion of programs, we would request that this board recommend clemency for Mr. Woodcock. I know that there are considerable questions about this crime. The state's theory behind this crime was that it was a murder for hire, 3 co-defendants, Mr. Woodcock's sister, John Paul Fallon. John Paul Fallon was granted immunity for turning state's evidence. And so much of the facts that came out at trial, much of the facts that are in the official record were facts that really came from Mr. Fallon, in that he was really the principal witness in this case, having turned state's evidence for that testimony. The other point that I would just like to make, and this is really goes to the importance of clemency. At the time that Mr. Woodcock was sentenced for first-degree murder, the sentence of life in prison was a mandatory sentence. The judge didn't have the ability, nor even the facts of the ability for Mr. Woodcock to rehabilitate himself and change over the years. And the important thing about clemency is that it does offer people the opportunity who did receive sentences of life without the opportunity for parole to have some consideration about their development over their period of incarceration. And Mr. Woodcock's 43 years of incarceration is one that demonstrates that he is compliant with the rules. He is compliant with his medical treatment, would continue to do so should he be released. He's going to be surrounded. If he is released, he has an out-of-state plan to go to Alabama, where he will live with his sister. Right next door is a niece. Just a few blocks away are other family members. So he will be surrounded by support. Family also is around the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Mr. Weatherford will be available to assist as well. He'll also, participate in, Alcoholics Anonymous once he's out. And the reason for that primarily is that he does understand that that transition is one that will be different from his experience in prison, and he will utilize that support structure to continue to maintain his sobriety. So with the information that's presented at the hearing today, we request that he gain a recommendation for consideration of clemency. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to ask for an executive session.
We have a motion by Mrs. Jackson, a second by Mr. Roche for executive session to discuss confidential matters. Can you do a roll call, please?
Ms. Jackson.
Yeah.
Mr. Roche.
Yes.
Ms. Renatza.
Yes.
Mr. Marabella.
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes.
All right, so stand by. We'll be in executive session to discuss confidential matters. We'll be back shortly. Okay, we are back in regular session. Prepare to vote. Mrs. Jackson will be voting first.
First, I'd like to thank all of our participants here today, and those who are at prison. And I want you to know that we've taken into consideration every week. We don't disregard anybody's feelings or opinions. And so I'd like to thank the Armand family for your input, as well as the supporters of Mr. Woodcock. These are all different cases. Mondays suck, because Monday is always party day. And so they're always really difficult cases. And we take our responsibility very seriously. Assure you of that. I want to start by saying, particularly to Mr. Armand's son, you don't carry the burden of the responsibility of the decision. That's not on your shoulders. That's not on any of your shoulders. That's on our shoulders. We took on this responsibility and we carry the weight of it. So I want you to lift that up off your shoulders. It does not rest on you. Our responsibility is to look at a lot of factors. We do look at the crime, and they're all bad. They've all caused harm that continues. But the offender can't control what he's done in the past or the crime that brought him in. The only thing that they can do is move forward. And our responsibility is to look at that particular person and answer for ourselves. Do we think this person can be released to society? And we look at a lot of factors. Among those are, what has he done over the last 43 years or 30 years or however long that person has been incarcerated? What does their disciplinary record look like? How does the institution regard them? What level of trust do they put in that individual? And whether or not that person is going to be released with some sort of safety in place. And so those are the factors that I look at personally, and we all have our own, varying importance that we give to each one. So I want you to know that we don't take these decisions lightly at all. As I examine Mr. Woodcock's case, I'll say Mr. Woodcock did not interview well today, but not everybody does. And we learn to accept that. Some people are very glib speakers, but they're not ready. And then you have people like Mr. Woodcock who really doesn't present very well. And so you look at, well, how has he conducted himself over the last 43 years? Maybe that speaks more for him than this window that we get today. And so as I've looked at Mr. Woodcock, I feel that he is rehabilitated, even though he may not articulate it as well as I would like. I look at the fact that for 43 years, he's only had 2 write-ups. We've had people with hundreds of write-ups. He has held a position of trust within the institution. They don't let anybody be around the gun range. So there has to be a level of trust that they have in him. He has the support of the Louisiana Parole Project, so that if a governor should choose to sign a commutation, he would go to the Louisiana Parole Project to be reacclimated into society. Things have changed in 43 years, and he also has a good support system from his family, and he would be outside of the state of Louisiana. He has some serious health issues as well. And the longer he is incarcerated, the more those health issues will become the burden and the responsibility of the staff at the prison to care for him. That's a small factor, but it's also a factor. So for me personally, my vote would be to recommend to the governor that Mr. Woodcock's sentence be commuted to 99 years.
Thank you, Mrs. Jackson. Mr. Rushing.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. First of all, I'd like to thank the family for coming and sharing with us, and because a part of this process is the victim's input. The victim's input is very important. And as the victim advocate on this board, I understand that you are still physically, mentally, and emotionally affected by the death of your loved one. But there comes a time when you have to think about yourself. As Mrs. Jackson said, you can't carry the burden of this man's crime the rest of your life. Because you will create a prison within itself for yourself. You have to live life to the fullest. You can't do that without forgiveness. And I'll end it there. But as a victim advocate on this board, I'd like to vote in solidarity with the family and deny Mr. Woodcock his clemency. But you must remember that you have a life to live and you cannot live it within a prison created by yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to likewise thank everyone for coming. We certainly hear what you have to say. Judge Jackson was very articulate, pointing out what our rules, what we look for and what we have to do. And based upon what I believe my responsibility is, I agree with Judge Jackson. I vote likewise is going to be to recommend to the governor that he grant a commutation to 99 years.
Mr. Freeman?
You know, all our cases are difficult. And this one was really hard to listen to, understand. I don't understand. It's never happened to me, but I'm sure there's a lot of pain and anguish that go through on both sides. But listening to what I've heard today, my vote is to commute this sentence to 99 years.
All right, thank you, Mr. Freeman. Mr. Woodcock, my vote today is also that to make the recommendation your sentence be commuted. That's based on your age, the length of incarceration, the fact that you have an out-of-state plan, you have the support of the parole project, and the things that Warden Falvey has said on your behalf. So you received one vote that was not in favor, but 4 votes that were favorable. So we will make the recommendation on your behalf that your sentence be commuted to 99 years.
Thank you.